you do that? How did you do that?
Welcome back everyone to another ESO build video. Today is going to be the update to the Yogi build. Now this is for the Wrathstone DLC. This is a ranged bow build, and this is the original build from Summerset when bows were changed to 2 pieces. So we could take advantage of 2 5-piece sets and the monster set at the same time, which was very, very nice for bow builds, and of course for mag builds as well. Now this particular update is going to be obviously my own update itself, although there are a couple of videos out there already where people have kind of anticipated where I was going to go with it before I got a chance to release it, so you might have already seen some of it out there, just a disclaimer, but we're going to go into it nonetheless. So first of all, we're going to buff up and see our stats. We are on 16.9k max health, which you can increase with glyphs or you can change your food. 34.7k max stamina and 1693 stam recovery. We're on 56.7% crit chance with 3k weapon damage, which does go up with our glyphs and bonuses and such. We are on 64 points into stamina. We're using the Shadow Moonstone. We're a stage 4 vampire, and we're using Dubious Command Throne. Now this gives us max health, max stamina, and stam recovery. But if you don't mind the odd heavy attack here and there, and you do feel like you're a little bit too squishy, you can of course use max health, max stam food, which will give you more of a damage output in terms of your actual DPS so long as you can sustain it, but you may have to heavy attack every so often. Now this will obviously, as you can see, increase your max health by a lot more. You're up to 19k now and almost 37k max stam. So this does give you more damage if you can sustain it, but if you can't, you don't like heavy attack and occasionally to keep it up, then of course Dubious Command Throne is a lot more spammy and you can just keep your rotations up a lot cleaner. The choice is yours. Now, we are of course a stage 4 vampire, like I said, on purpose. I'm stage 4 vampire on all of my characters because I'm not scared of fire. Just stay out of stupid. So if anyone tells you that they died because they're a vampire, nope, they died because they got hit by stuff they shouldn't have. Very simple. Anyway, we're going to go into the skills. Going to go into them in detail. So if you do not understand these, of course, I would stick by this and listen very carefully. I'm going to say where they all come from, what they morph into, and all that good stuff. If you are familiar with them already, then of course you're welcome to skip. But if you do ask questions that I've already answered in the comment section below, I will not be responding to those comments. So it's at your own risk. So, first of all, we are using the Bull Netch. This is in the Animal Companion skill line. It's a 4th ability you unlock, so you will need some of these to start with. And it starts off as Betty Netch, morph it to Bull Netch. Now, what this does is this gives us 5,376 stamina recovery over 27 seconds. It restores it over that period of time. And gives us Major Sorcery and Brutality, increasing our weapon and spell damage by 20%. And it is free. Major Brutality for free, with 5.5k almost stam recovery over 27 seconds. That, by the way, doesn't show up in our stats. That 1.5 there, obviously higher with a potion. 1.693 stam recovery. Doesn't show this in the stats. So this is on top of it. Our recovery is massive. So keep that up all the time. You've got to keep this active. Very, very simple ability. It doesn't cost you anything, and it's there all the time. Don't let it run out. Next up is Cutting Dive. This is the first ability in the Animal Companion skill line. It starts off as Dive, morph it to Cutting Dive for the stamina morph if you ever use it. But honestly, we do not actually use this skill. It is only there for stats, and when I get to the passives, that'll make a lot more sense. You could put this here instead if you wanted, just for the sake of it, but honestly, it's just there for passives. Now, this particular skill can be swapped out for Race Against Time, but I'll get to that when I get to the gear alterations. There are some choices. Next up is Subterranean Assault. Now this also is in the Animal Companion skill line. This is the 2nd ability you unlock. Starts off as Scorch, morph it to Subterranean Assault. Now this will be cast first of all, and then 3 seconds later it will explode and do poison damage under the target which you are aiming at. And it will also reduce their physical resistance by 5280 for 5 seconds in the form of Major Fracture, which is exactly the same as a tank's taunt, so no, they do not stack. But what this does is it fires from whichever way you're facing and then releases. However, if you turn around, your character physically turns around, it will release itself in a different direction. So be very careful of that. If, for example, you accidentally fired it and you don't want to pull the boss yet, turn around. You'll be fine. But if you fire it over here and that target dies and you want to aim at the next one, you can get his attention. Very, very simple. We use that once every rotation, but there is an alteration to that if you don't have certain skills, so I'll come back to this in a moment. But first of all, you want it to be Subterranean Assault. Next up is Bird of Prey. Now, this was altered in Murkmire, I believe. Now, this just needs to sit on your bar. It's the 5th ability to unlock in the Animal Companion skill line. It's called Falcon Swiftness to start with, morph it to Bird of Prey. While on your bar, you will gain minor berserk, increasing all of the damage that you do by 8% the whole time. Yes, you can get this from Combat Prayer as well, so that is a buff that you keep yourself without the need to get it from someone else, but if you are getting buffed by Combat Prayer, obviously they don't stack. Same as the Nightblade gets minor berserk as well. No other classes get it unless you're getting a buff from somebody else. Now, what this also does is if you activate it, it increases your movement speed by 30% for 10 seconds, and the stamina recovery by 20%. Now that stamina recovery bonus we already have in our potions. That's not necessarily essential, but if you don't have any potions present at the time, you can of course activate it and get that nice buffer to recovery. But above all, this is on our bar static. You keep it there, you don't touch it. Next up is Lethal Arrow. Now this is in the bow skill line. First ability to unlock, no excuse for it, you get it very, very early on. Morph it from Snipe to Lethal Arrow on purpose. You don't want the other morph. This morph is poison damage when it hits the target, but it also guarantees a poison status effect as well. Now, a poison status effect is a 6-second damage over time effect, which does poison every 2 seconds. You have this 100% of the time so long as you keep your rotation up. It's very, very powerful indeed. Also, it inflicts Major Defile on the target, reducing their healing received and health recovery for 4 seconds as well. So every single shot, it just reapplies Major Defile. That's more effective in PvP than it is PvE, but if you've got a target that does have a habit of healing lots, it will debuff it. But this is your main spammable. You need to use this all the time. Next up is Wild Guardian. This is our main ultimate, again, in the Animal Companion skill line. You can see where we're going with this. We're very animal friendly for this particular build. Now, this starts off as Feral Guardian, and we morph it to Wild Guardian. This is why Yogi is the title for the build. It's all about the bear. Now, this does physical damage to the targets. It does an area of effect swipe every so often, and does a stun as well, which is really, really nice. It's high damage ultimate, but it's cheap as hell. It only costs us 75 ultimate. Now, you can keep this buff or this bonus or this bear up the whole time. He stays active as long as he's on both bars, but when you activate the ultimate, that's when he does his big, big hit. Now, this does a massive physical damage kind of lunge at the target, hits him really, really hard, but if the enemy is under 25% health, this will deal up to an additional 100% more damage. So this is actually an execute as well. So if you fire this at low health, it hits really, really hard. He is very, very strong. When we get to racial passives, I'll also tell you another option for this, but for now, this is what you want to keep. Both bars. Now, our back bar skills. Again, surprise, surprise, another bow. First of all is Vigor. Now, you don't have to have Vigor if you don't want to. It is very, very effective as a heal. Comes from the Assault skill line. You will need PvP alliance points for this, but you don't have to go to Cyrodiil. If you really don't like PvP or you're not very good at it and you just die all the time and never get any alliance points, do not worry. You can go into Battlegrounds. And even if you lose in Battlegrounds, you will still be awarded alliance points at the end for taking part. So just persist with the Battlegrounds, get your points, get your Vigor, and get out. Now this starts off as Vigor, morph it to Resolving Vigor. There you go, area of effect heal to you and your group and your bear. Giving you a heal once a second for 5 seconds. Don't spam it, it won't be effective if you spam it, you lose stamina. Once every 5 seconds if you need to, don't overshoot it. However, if you don't have access to Vigor right now, of course you can go into the Green Balance skill line and you can get Fungal Growth and morph it into Soothing Spores. Now this will put a frontal heal for you and other members, including your bear and yourself, and it's basically your base stamina heal for your class. Everyone who gets healed by this will obviously be healed 15% more if they are within 8 meters of you, so the closer the better. But this is your if you don't have Vigor option. So don't panic if you don't have it. Next up is Poison Injection. This comes from the bow skill line. Last ability you unlock, so you will need these first of all on your bar to unlock it. You start off as Poison Arrow and you want to morph it into Poison Injection. And this does a single target poison damage over time for 10 seconds. It's very, very powerful. You want to keep it on the target at all times. But above all, this is even more effective at low health. So the longer it's on the target, the more aggressive it gets, and the lower their health gets, the more damage it will do. So enemies under 50% will take up to 260% more damage. So under 50%, you get more damage from this skill, and under 25%, you get more damage from your ultimate. So you do actually have a little bit of a push during low health. Next up is Razor Caltrops. Now, this is in the Assault skill line as well. So you do, again, have to get some alliance points to unlock this. It's underneath Resolving Vigor. Starts off as Caltrops, morph it to Razor Caltrops. This is quite expensive, so don't spam it. Big AoE on the ground, does damage initially, and then does damage every 1 second to every target inside. It's very, very powerful. You want to keep it up all the time. But if, again, you haven't got Vigor yet, so you've gone for the other heal, and you haven't been into PvP, so obviously you haven't got Caltrops yet, you can double bar Subterranean Assault, and you can use it on the back bar before you swap to the front. But that I will explain in the rotation when we get there. So you do have two options. You don't have to have Resolve and Vigor, you can use the Spores, and you don't have to have Razor Caltrops, you can use the Subterranean Assault. Damage will be altered, obviously, but those are your options while you are grinding for those abilities. Next up is Bird of Prey again. As you can see, we've double barred it, so we've got Minor Berserk on both bars. Doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. Next up is Endless Hail, which starts off as Volley. It's in the bow skill line. Volley first, morph it to Endless Hail. Now this does a small damage over time area of effect ability, but the damage is huge. Area of effect is small, much smaller than Caltrops, but the damage is insane. You've got to keep this ability up all the time. It actually does damage every half a second. Most damage over time is 2 seconds. Some very rare ones like Caltrops and such are every 1 second, and this one is every half a second, so keep those 2 dots up at all times. And of course the ultimate on the back bar is the bear. As we've already stated, you need to double bar it, otherwise you will lose the bear. If he has a different ultimate on the front or the back, every time you swap he will die. So keep it on both bars. Now we're going to get into passives. Very quick this build because we've only got one weapon type. Quite nice. So, Animal Companions first of all. You want these essential passives. When one of your animal companions is killed or unsummoned, you restore 1260 health. That also means when you unsummon them. So, the Subterranean Assault ability itself, when it pops and disappears, you will heal. This, if you do use it, which we're not, if it dies, which it will, because it'll hit the target and disappear, you will heal. And the Bull Netch as well. Every time you cast it, it counts as a resummon or a new pet, and the last one has been removed. That will heal you. As you can see there, I just healed. So this is a small passive, but it's very, very effective. Get this passive as soon as you can. When you cast an Animal Companion ability in combat, you generate 4 ultimate. This can happen once every 8 seconds. Very, very simple. If you fire off the Bear ultimate, or you fire Subterranean Assault, or the Bull Netch, or you even fire the Wings, which you don't really need to, every time that you do, once every 8 seconds, you will actually gain ultimate. So this is very, very effective indeed. This does actually fire off quite well inside our rotation, so we can actively use this pretty much every time it's on cooldown. Increases your mag and stam recovery by 12% if an Animal Companion ability is slotted. Well, we have loads on this bar, so that bar's covered, and we have 1 on the back bar, so we get the passive on both bars. Very, very effective. And finally, increases your damage done by 3% for each Animal Companion ability slotted. Now, let's not get that confused with the Fighter's Guild passive, if you're familiar with those. The Fighter's Guild passive is a 3% increase to weapon damage. This is a 3% increase to damage. All your damage. Just like Minor Slayer gives you a 5% bonus to all of the damage that you do in dungeons and trials and such, this is a flat damage bonus for everything that we do per ability slotted. And as you can see, we've took full advantage of this. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Animal Companion abilities slotted, giving us a massive 15% to our overall damage output. Absolutely insane. On the back bar, of course, we have 6 because we've only got 2 abilities, but we don't stay on the back bar for very long. If you don't need Vigor, which is very, very rare, I would highly recommend keeping Vigor on your bar. You can, of course, swap to one of these other abilities and put that on your bar as well to be a little bit more squish and more damage output. And, of course, if you don't have Razor Caltrops, then, of course, Subterranean Assault can go on there and give you additional damage. So the choice is yours, but the overall rotation damage output has been much more, let's say, optimal this way around. This is only if you're really trusting of your healers and want to risk not having healed, which I wouldn't recommend. Next up is Green Balance. You don't need all of these. If you heal someone with a Green Balance ability, so your Soothing Spores, if you have it slotted, while they're under 40% health, you will gain major mended increase in your healing done. So that's actually important if you do have that skill. If you don't, dump this, you won't need it. This one, when you heal an ally with a Green Balance ability, again, only if you're using the Spores, you will gain 250 Stamina or Magicka, whichever resource pool is lower, once a second. So that's actually quite good for your resource sustain, but only if you're using this ability. This one here, so you can dump these if you have Vigor, you don't need them. This one here increases your healing done with the Green Balance ability slotted by 2% for each one. So on the back bar, if you did have the Fungal Spores or the Soothing Spores or whatever it's called, you will get a 2% bonus to that ability, but we don't. So you can dump this as well. Finally, however, when you activate a heal on yourself or an ally, you grant the target minor toughness, increasing their max health by 10% for 20 seconds. So if you pop this and you heal yourself, as you can see, my health just went up. So although I'm using the lesser food, which gives me 16.7k health, I'm now sitting on 18.2. If I was using the shinier food, the max health one, the really, really high health, I'm actually on 20.8. My health is insane. So we don't need to worry about that. Now, the good thing is, if I do this and heal other people, they receive it as well, including the bear. Everybody gets minor toughness. It's really, really handy. So you can buff the group's health just by keeping a heal up once every 20 seconds if you like. Very, very effective passive, and the Warden's the only one that can do that. The only other way to get this is from the Warrior's Poet set, which would normally be put on a tank. Now, these abilities here we're not actually using. However, if you are in a situation where you feel that you're comfortable with your heals and you don't need any at all, which is very, very rare, you can, of course, slot one of these. Whichever variation is up to you. You've got this one, which is minor protection and gives you a major resolve and major ward bonus. And then you've got this one, which has a larger range. Now, this has been altered and gives you a bonus to major ward and major resolve for you and your group up to 12 people. So this is now a massive trial buff rather than just a small group buff. I don't actively use it on this build, but if you do use it, then you can take advantage of some of the passives. If you need the resist bonus, you might have someone else already doing this for you. Now, this increases the chance of applying chilled to enemies with Winter's Embrace abilities. We're not actually using any that apply that, so that doesn't matter. You can dump that. This one increases your physical and spell resistance for each ability slotted. So if you do have resistance buff on your back bar, while on your back bar, you'll have increased resistances from this. So that one you can take. Reduces effectiveness of snares applied to you by 15%. We are ranged, we are quite nippy, we do want to be fairly fast, and this makes us not be snared quite so much, so you do want that. And this increases the magic and frost damage by 6%. We're not using either, so dump this. So you'll want this one overall, but then of course you can take the resistance bonus if you do choose to slot this. But again, that's a choice you can make. I personally wouldn't do it. Now, bow passive, we want every single one of these. Now, this increases the damage that you do by 12% up against enemies at longer range. This is with your bow ability specifically. So your lethal arrow, your endless hail, and your poison injection, and your light and heavy attacks are all boosted by a whopping 12% at long range. So when you see these bow builds and they're right in the face of the enemy, they're doing it wrong. You need to be at long range to take advantage of this passive, otherwise it does not apply. Also, don't forget, we've got a 15% damage bonus across the board for all our other abilities and our bow abilities for having the animal companion abilities slotted. And these stack. So although it looks like we've got low weapon damage, our actual damage percentage bonus output is insane just by passives. This increases our crit chance while having a bow equipped. This reduces the stamina cost of the abilities we obviously want to be able to sustain. And this, while dealing damage with a light or heavy attack, you have a 5% bonus to your bow abilities for 5 seconds. As long as you keep up a light attack once every 5 seconds, you can stack this up to 5 times. Keep that going throughout your entire rotation, and you can have this up at its max potential 100% of the time. So we have a 25% increase to damage here, 12% increase to damage here, and a 15% across the board bonus to damage here. It's absolutely mental. Keep these up. Now, finally, you've got Major Expedition if you dodge roll. However, we do have that already, and we can use Magicka to apply it. So instead of dodge rolling to go faster, we can actually just use this and sprint instead. So the choice is yours. You can dodge roll and take advantage of it, or you can just press the wings and run. Depends on whether you're evading or whether you just want to run fast. Now, light armor, we're using one piece of light armor, so this reduces the effectiveness of snares, and of course, it reduces the cost of sprint, which is nice and handy. This reduces the cost of magic abilities and increases your recovery, which is only relevant if we're using magic abilities, which most of the time we're not. However, there is a variation which you can, which I'm going to get to. This increases our resistances by a small amount for having one piece of worn as well, and these two are not relevant because we're not wearing 5 pieces, so dump these two. We are using 5 pieces of medium armor, so we want to take advantage of all of these passives. This improves your crit chance per piece worn. This reduces the cost of stamina abilities, increases your recovery. This is for sneaking, so it's not necessarily that essential, but you can get it if you want. This increases our weapon damage by 15%, another stack and bonus right there. And this increases our movement speed and reduces the cost of sprint, and also reduces the cost of dodge rolls. So efficient for our sustain there. Heavy armor, we do wear one piece of heavy armor. This increases our resistances slightly. This will give us resource return just for being damaged once every 4 seconds, and this will give us a 2% increase to max health. Now, we are a stage 4 vampire, I always am. This will increase your mag recovery and stam recovery on top of our bonuses that we already have as a warden, so this is very, very nice indeed for our sustain. This, the lower your health under 50%, the less damage you take, up to a massive 33% reduction to damage. This is absolutely insane and will save your life countless times. This also reduces the severity of health recovery as a vampire. We do have lower health recovery, but this reduces its severity, meaning that you don't have such a bad health recovery bonus, although we don't really rely on that anyway. However, this above all is essential. I've already explained what it does. Make sure you get this. Vampire is insane. If you hear people crying about being killed because they're in fire and they're a vampire, 99% of the time that is just excuses. They stood in shit and it's their own fault. Fighters Guild. Now, we're not using any Fighters Guild abilities, but we do want to take advantage of the passives. And not this one because we're not using any, but you can take advantage of this one here, which is Banish the Wicked. You generate 9 ultimate when you kill an undead, Daedra, or werewolf. You will kill plenty of those. You are the one that does the damage. You will get the killing blows, and every time you do, you get 9 ultimate. Now, our ultimate only costs 75 to cast, so you don't have to kill many enemies to be able to spam that ability. It's insane. Get this as soon as. The rest, however, since we're not using any Fighters Guild abilities, are not applicable. So just get this one here. Now, Sigic Order, Race Against Time is here. We're going to come back to this. This is if you're using a certain setup, so I'll explain it when I get to the gear. Thieves Guild is not relevant. Undaunted is. Every single synergy you see, especially at range, you're going to need. So make sure you take every single one of them. They will give you 4% of your entire resources pools back. So max stam, max magic, and max health will be filled by 4% every single synergy. And there are some really nice ones you can take at range. So make sure you do. Also Undaunted Metal. For wearing 3 different types of armor, we get 2% for each type. Heavy, light, and medium. 2% across the board. We've got 6% increase to max stam, max magic, and max health. Really, really important. Assault's not relevant, neither's that. We are an orc, don't get mad. We do have a 2k stam bonus. Now that is the same as the Imperial, and it is the same as the Wood Elf, so you can use those if you prefer. We have an increased 1k max health, which is really obviously nice to our overall health pool to give us that survivability, especially at range. But the Imperial does have 2k, so it's slightly higher. When you deal damage with a weapon ability, so a light attack or snipe or poison injection or volley or whatever, you can heal for 600, which can crit and obviously has bonuses to healing received and all that good stuff. So it's quite high, and this is once every 4 seconds. So your survivability at range is up. However, if you are an Imperial instead, this is still just fine because you will get back around 450 health and you'll get 333 magic and stamina back once every 6 seconds. So it helps towards your sustain and you still get the heals as well. So that's very, very close. But the Imperial does have a reduction to cost, including your ultimate. And that was where I was getting to here. You actually get a 3% reduction to cost. So you can use this more often and your abilities are easier to sustain. So that's the difference between the Orc and the Imperial as far as these are concerned. So either is fine. However, the Imperial does have something as far as sustain is concerned that the Orc doesn't, and the Orc in return has more damage. So the Orc can actually put out an extra 258 weapon damage, meaning that top end, you'll get about 1k extra DPS depending on how well you sustain. And this also reduces the cost of sprinting and increases your movement speed. And at range, we need to be quite nippy, so this does help. The choice is yours. You can be Wood Elf, Dark Elf, Khajiit, Imperial, or Orc. It's entirely up to you. But if you want the extra flat weapon damage bonus and the stam bonus combined, then the Orc will pump out a little bit more damage, although the Dark Elf is very, very close. It's up to you. But for this one, we're using the Orc. Now, finally, the most important passive in the game, in my opinion, is Medicinal Use. There is an alchemy guide in the description for this. It will tell you how to get alchemy up really, really fast. And then you can just dump all your points and then put medicinal use up to 3. This will increase your potions all the way up to 47.6 seconds in terms of their duration. Meaning the cooldown is 45 seconds and we can have 100% uptime on these. Don't just use the potion when you're low. Use the potion all the time. Major Brutality we do already have with our Bullnetch, but we do want to keep that up just in case it drops off. Also, we have Major Savagery with us all the time with these potions, and Major Endurance with us all the time with the potions, increasing our recovery. So keep these up all the time. Now, we're going to get into the gear. Now, the original build was using Griffin, which we've got attached now. Now, this is a 5-piece bonus. You want to make sure your bow is sharpened. Now, we're using double dot poisons on the front, and we are using an infused weapon and spell damage glyph on the back. You can actually switch this around. It's not going to make a massive difference, but the infused trait does obviously give us 100% uptime on it, and that means that you can open up the sharpened trait on the front bar and not have any downtime. So the double dot poison is Nirnroot, Nightshade, and Fleshfly Lava with Alkahest. Get as many of these as you can, slap them on your front bar, you don't have to worry about a glyph. However, if you do have a glyph on the front bar and you're not really sure what to use, a poison glyph or a stamina return glyph is just fine. The damage output is quite close, but the poisons do top out a little bit more. Sharpened on purpose, because we want to make sure we've got that extra penetration from range. This gives you critical chance weapon damage, and then after dealing direct damage, including light attacks, you gain minor force for 3 seconds, and minor expedition, increasing your speed, so you're quite nippy. Now this was the original setup. We're using three jewelry, or you can use body pieces, and the bow on the front bar. Now, the upgraded version, which we're using now, is of course Zogvin's, which is from Frostvault, I believe, the new dungeon. And basically what this does, this is the more optimal choice. This will actually give us crit and crit again. It has less weapon damage because it doesn't have it. Instead, it gives us penetration. And when you deal critical damage, you stack up to 10 crit bonuses up to 1290 for 10 seconds. 10 stacks. So every single critical damage tick that you do from any damage will add a stack up to 10. When it gets to 10, you'll gain minor force for 10 seconds. And this increases your crit damage by 10%. So they're relatively close. If you look at this set here, we get minor force from range, we get 2 crit bonuses, and we get penetration. Griffins, we get crit again, weapon damage instead of penetration, and we still get minor force. Now the difference is this set is faster for your movement, but while you're on your back bar, that 3-second duration can drop off. However, with this set, you get slightly more crit chance. We're actually about 5.8% more crit chance. We get less weapon damage, but minor force stays with us when we swap bars for longer. So you have a slightly higher uptime. Now this did outperform, so this is the new upgrade, obviously. This is the one people got ahead of me with and released their builds before I'd finished. But Griffin, if you have it, does still perform incredibly well. In fact, there's only about 1.5 to 2k DPS difference tops. And if you've got someone bunging out Twilight all the time, in fact, there's no difference. So it's up to you. If you've still got Griffin, you can still use it. If you've got this and you can get access to it, then of course this will be slightly higher. So this is your optimal choice. Now, if you're using the crafted choice and you're using mechanical acuity from the previous patch update, that does still work just as effective. It's very, very strong. You can still use it, but you will not have minor force. In which case, this is when you need to go to your skills and replace this, which will reduce your overall output by 3%, with Race Against Time. And you use that in your rotation every time you switch bars. When you do that, however, you will want the Sigic Order passives in order to give you the reduction to cost. Spell Orb is quite nice if you can actually keep up the rotation. And of course, Concentrated Barrier, which will give you this free damage shield if you block. So you've got the damage shield with the crafted setup, or you've got the extra damage output with the new altered setup or the original setup. The choice is in fact yours. So you've got some options there. But in a nutshell, we're using Zogvin's bow and jewelry or body pieces. We're using Reliquin on the body, perfected or regular, doesn't matter. This will give you crit chance, minor slayer, crit chance again, max stamina if it's perfected, no max stamina if it's not. And your light and heavy attacks will apply a spinning wind effect on the target, and every 1 second, every light or heavy that you do will add another stack up to 20. Now this is an advanced set, but easier to use on a bow set. Now, as you can see, the light attack there gives you the spinning whirlwind. And if you look at my buff timers at the bottom there, you can see like an eye. That is your Hawkeye passive. Your Hawkeye passive needs to be up all the time to give you the additional damage to your bow. Your Reliquin needs to be up to keep up the uptime of that damage. As long as you're keeping Hawkeye up, Reliquin is staying with you. So if one fails, they both fail. If Reliquin falls off, Hawkeye falls off. If that happens, you lose 25% increase to your bow damage, and you lose about 7k a second from Reliquin. So make sure you keep those light attacks up. It is incredibly essential. If you can't do that, you probably need to go and practice or change this set for something else. It's up to you, but it's going to take a bit of practice. Finally, the monster set is the same as it was before. It's Stormfist. Just bear in mind, of course, this has a recovery bonus, and if you deal damage, it will make the Stormfist hand pop out, doing shock damage every 1 second for 3 seconds, and it will do a big physical hit as well with an 8-second cooldown. So it is up for 3 seconds, down for 5. Now, something that people have overlooked, I know there's a lot of people shouting that this outperforms other monster sets because of the damage. That's not strictly true. The damage output is very similar to that of many other sets, but this is range, so I can utilize this at long range rather than having to really position myself to be able to reach with like Veladreth and such. But the one thing to consider with this is there's a lot of stuff out there where people are saying don't use shock glyphs, don't use this, blah 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 in a pass, but they're overlooking this. This actually fires off shock damage. Shock has a status effect, which is concussion, aka minor vulnerability. So you can actually proc minor vulnerability in your own passes and get higher damage than other setups by using this set and not realize it's happening. That is fine. That is how your build is. But while you're throwing out these rules that people keep making up about minor vulnerability here, there, and everywhere, if it's on your build, it's on your build. As simple as that. This has been overlooked. Anyway, let's get to traits. So sharpened on the front, Maelstrom on the back with infused or a crafted bow, or the same as this, whichever you've got hand to at the moment. Infused on the large pieces, which is head, chest, and legs, and then divines on everything else. Weapon damage, weapon damage, weapon damage on the jewelry with 2 robust and 1 bloodthirsty. Now these items can be in any order as long as your bow is of the Zogfin, Griffin, or Acuity set, and you have at least 3 pieces somewhere else of the set. In any order, as long as your front bar weapon is always this particular set or variation of it, you will be just fine. Now, we are going to get to champion points, and then I'm going to explain the rotation and the alteration of our rotation as well. So first of all, Red Tree, same as before, 72 points into Ironclad to reduce direct damage incoming, 64 and 64 for every other type of damage that you receive, and of course 51 points, giving us a 19% reduction to damage over time. These are very well balanced across the board, but you may want to change them depending on the content. Also consider Unchained. If you do break free, which you might have to in some content, your next stamina ability cost is 80% less, so throw out a Caltrops, it's the most expensive thing you got, make it cost nearly nothing. 19 points in a quick recovery to increase your healing received from your heals, other people's heals, etc. But of course for 10 points in this tree, if you are rezzing someone, you will take less damage. Pop a vigor, throw in a res, you're fine. 44 points into Warlord to reduce the cost of break free. 75 into Tenacity, 75 into Mooncarve. Don't put any more points into here, because if you do, the 1% bonus that you're trying to strive for will take you 25 points to gain. So don't waste them. Diminished returns are incredibly high. 76 points into Tumbling, so that we get the Treasure Hunter passive, so we get better loot from chests, and of course so we have dodge roll reduction cost at as high as we possibly can for the points we've got remaining. Technically you only need 72 in here, so you can put points into Shadow Ward if you prefer, but it's only a 1% bonus anyway, so it's entirely up to you. Nothing in here. 66 into Master Arms, we're doing a shit ton of direct damage, we need as much of that as possible, and our light and heavy attacks are massive part of our rotation, so we boost that as well. This does also boost lights and heavies, but they bounce off each other. And of course we've got 75 points in here, meaning we can take advantage of the Butcher's passive, so our lights and heavies, while the target is below 25%, actually do more damage. Keep your light attacks up. 56 into Thermitage, we are doing a lot of damage over time, so this helps push that. We're doing a fair amount of crit, especially with a crit chance bonus coming from our sets as well, so we will increase our precise strikes here. We don't have a lot of penetration on our setup, apart from Sharpened and 1 bonus on our set, so you can put 35 points into here, and we're not using the Lover Stone either, so this gives us a nice 3k balance amount here, which means if we do get Major Fracture, plus Alkosh, plus a Crusher, we can hit cap quite easily. 64 points into Mighty, of course, as well, making sure that we take advantage of as much poison and physical damage as we possibly can. Now I'm going to go over the rotation. This is very, very simple. Really simple, in fact. You want to keep you want to make sure that your Betty or your Bullnetch is up all the time. So keep him up. Now, what you need to do, first of all, is fire off your Shulks and swap bars. Really simple. While you're on the back bar, you want Endless Hail, Light Attack, Poison Injection, Light Attack, Caltrops, swap. Then, all you need to do is Light Attack, Lethal Arrow. Light Attack, Lethal Arrow. 4 times. Light Attack, Shulks, Light Attack, Bullnetch, swap. Start again. Simple as that. So let me show what that looks like on the skeleton. Very, very simple, and then I'll explain the ultimate. So you keep the Bullnetch up, Shulk swap, volley, light poison, light Caltrops swap, light lethal, light lethal, light lethal, light lethal, light Shulk, light bull swap, volley, light poison, light Caltrops swap, light lethal 4 times again, 1, 2, 3, 4, light shulks, light bull, swap. Volley, light, poison, light, caltrop. You can see where this is going. Very, very simple. Not difficult at all. Keep your potions up all the time. Keep that rotation up all the time. Your set, as you can see, will give you massive crit chance because that is still running. Except with a potion, there we go, 62.5. We are using the Shadow Moonstone so we can take advantage of that, of course, which is really, really handy because we've got high crit chance so we can take advantage of the high damage. Everything slots together. We keep our poison status effect up all the time because of the amount of times we're using Lethal Arrow. We keep our Hawkeye up all the time because of the light attacks. We keep Reliquin up all the time because of the light attacks, and everything synergizes together. Keep your buffs up, keep your dots up. The reason we have 4 snipes in, or 4 lethal arrows instead of 5 is because if you do 5, volley is going to wear off. We don't want volley to wear off. We want to reapply it as soon as it's done. So pay attention to that. Now, when do you use the bear? If the bear is ready, we replace 1 lethal arrow with a light attack and then bear attack. So let's say for argument's sake we're swapping to the front bar. Never use it on the back, by the way. Use it on the front. Light lethal. Oh, bear's ready. Light bear. Now we've only got 2 lethals left. And then you just carry on with your rotation as normal. Very, very simple. Now, alteration to rotations. We're going to have to dump the bear so he stops hitting the skeleton for a moment. Now, what you can do, if you are still using mechanical acuity and you don't have access to Griffin or Zogvins, basically you can put on Race Against Time, as we've already stated. Now, this will apply Minor Force instead of you having it attached to your set. So your rotation will change. Now, what you'll need to do here is you'll still use 4 lethal arrows, but you won't use Bull Netch when you swap bars. You'll use Race Against Time. So Race Against Time needs to be on all the time. Volley, light, poison, light, caltrop, swap. Then you'll do 4 lethal arrows. We're going to have to go to the next skeleton for this, because he's nearly dead. There's 4. Light, shulks, light, Race Against Time, swap. Volley, light, poison, light, caltrop, swap. Then 4 again. Don't forget, replace one with a bear if you have to. Now, when do we get the Bull Netch? Whenever it runs out, reapply it, sneak it in. That's all you got to do. Race, swap. Always Race Against Time before you swap bars. Damage is very, very close if you have that same setup. It's not much in it. It's only about 2k. The optimal setup would, of course, be to have the previous one that I just showed you with Zovkin's bow and take advantage of course, the full Animal Companion passives with Cliff Racer on the front or Cut and Dive. But it depends on what you have to hand. One more thing to note, by the way. If you do not have caltrops, obviously you are going to suffer as far as damage over time is concerned. But what you can do for the time being is you can replace caltrops with a Subterranean Assault. You can replace it with it. So it won't give you the same bonus, it won't give you the same damage output, but it will of course give you more AoE Fracture because it's going to have a higher uptime. And it will still do decent damage. So you can basically do this. Instead of caltrops, just fire this. Still stick to 4. And the bear if you have to. Really simple stuff. And as you can see, the damage output is still pretty good. For yourself, you have higher uptime on Major Fracture, of course. But you're probably going to want the AoE, especially in content, rather than solo stuff. You get the idea. So, there are some choices. Now, I'm going to show you a demonstration on the target skeleton. We have someone applying a taunt for me for Major Fracture 100% uptime, because that is basically how we do the tests. Because you'll generally, 9 times out of 10, in fact, 10 times out of 10 if you're in a dungeon, I hope, or a trial, you will have a tank. And they should be applying the Pierce Armor in the form of Major Fracture and Major Breach. So for every single test, I apply that because there are classes that have it in their arsenal, including us, that wouldn't make it balanced for everybody else. So I always have a tank present taunting. There's no Crusher, there's just a taunt. So Major Fracture is applied, the rotation is as I've just explained. Here we go. So hopefully that helped. Hopefully that wasn't too boring. Hopefully you now have a better understanding of how to use this particular build. There are options, like I said, so don't panic. I know a couple of people kind of got this out a little bit before I had the chance to, but the build is updated nonetheless. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Once again, thank you all very much for watching. I hugely appreciate the support. And if you are not subscribing, please do hit that button. It is free. Furthermore, if you would like to support outside of the channel, there are some links in the description for Patreon, Twitter, Facebook, and of course the website XynodeGaming.com. I do live stream every single night on Twitch from 10 PM UK time, unless I state otherwise on Twitter. Maybe I'm recording, maybe I'm having the night off, who knows. Anyway, thank you all very, very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.